The following announcement has been paid for by Perched on the Top Rope.
Hey, you wrestling fans out there. Do you know who I am? I'm the Mountie, and you're watching Perched on the Top Rope right now.
I'm the Mountie. I'm handsome, I'm brave, I'm strong. I'm the Mountie, and I enforce the law. You can try to run, but you can never hide. The Mountie always gets his man.
Welcome everyone to Perched on the Top Rope. I am your host, former dirt sheet writer Lee Walker. And as you heard and saw from that show opener today, ladies and gentlemen, joining me is Jacques Rougeau, as you also know as the Mountie in WWF. Jacques, how are you doing today?
Oh, Lee, first of all, I got to say thank you so much for having me on your rated show around the world. It's amazing for me. I actually forgot how to be nervous. I used to be nervous like this on pay-per-views and stuff like that. And now I got a little bit of ice breaking to do with you, but thank you so much for having me on board.
No, I really appreciate you coming on, and I want to thank Mayor McCall of Wrestling Talk for helping set this interview up. Make sure you go and you watch his YouTube, and make sure you listen to him anywhere and everywhere podcasts are found. It's Wrestling Talk with Mayor McCall. Jacques, you have Lutte Academy for fans in America. Lutte is wrestling in French. The Lutte Academy, you've been doing it for a few years now. And this year, you seemingly raised the stakes higher and higher for the winners. This year, you now have 4 winners with 2 men and 2 women. They can go home with $10,000 and an opportunity to go train in Bandido's gym in Mexico City. The success of Lutte Academy has been really no surprise to anyone in the wrestling world. I have to ask, how did you get it all set up, and what was the reasoning behind Lutte Academy?
Well, firstly, I got to say it's the passion that I have for wrestling. I've always had this passion since I was 4 years old. I'm going to be 64 this year, so 60 years of passion, just living my dream all my life. And I always had a love of wrestling. And it all started about after COVID. I closed my wrestling school and I stopped my wrestling shows. I had shows that I was going on for 20 years up in Quebec, just the Jacques Rougeau family wrestling shows. And I started podcasts like pretty much everybody on the planet during COVID. We were trying to keep busy or staying alive and staying visible. And I had this guest. I'm fortunate in Quebec to be very well known and very well respected from different people, like the sports people, the entertainment people, the singers. And anyway, so I had this girl singer that came to my podcast, and Marie-Hélène Sibert. And she participated in a show 20 years ago that was called a Star Academy. And it was like, what they did is they recruited all the amateur singers from different places in Quebec. And they had like an elimination tournament where the big prizes was at the end. And this became the number 1 show in Quebec. And so the big prizes was that they went to sing at the Bell Center, which is now the Bell Center, was at the Forum at the time, to sing with Celine Dion. And so it was like, wow, so she came and explained her experience in my podcast, and after we'd finished the podcast, I looked at my girlfriend and I said, there came my passion again. I looked at my girlfriend and I said, wouldn't that be great if we did something like that for wrestling? Like, just have people from all over Canada just come, the best wrestlers in Canada, and come to Montreal, and then we'd find some sponsors to book the flights, get the hotels, and get some prizes going, and have an elimination thing. Because in a wrestler's career, it's always been, in my career, you go to a venue, you go to a show, you perform, you're nervous to perform, but your storyline, your match, just about how it's going to go. You talk about it, you go do your job, and then you go home. It's finished. But when you go in a reality show like we're creating now, it's like you go into the ring, you do your show, and then you have to stand up in the middle of the ring, and then you got judges by the ring. and the judges they go ahead and they start undressing you, like, you know, with your quality of wrestling ability, your promo before going into the ring, your looks, your charisma, the interaction with the crowd, and so it's like it's a whole new ball game. So what happens is now I start putting matches together. Like I had a guy in New Brunswick, I had a guy in Vancouver. Get them on Zoom, help them put their match together a month before the venue in Montreal when they come here, and put all our ideas together. It's their ideas, it's my idea, and we put a match together, and then they come and they sit in front of the judges, and what a big stress it is, because it's different. There's big prizes, and so it's like this year you're talking about $10,000 for 4 winners, like each $10,000, but 3 years ago it was $5,000 each, plus. The last 2 years, the winners were going at the Nightmare Factory, where Billy Gunn, QT Marshall, and Cody Rhodes were training them for 3 months for free, you know. So it was like a big deal for them. And you know, in this business, Lee, my father always told me one thing when I was young. There's 2 ways you can make it in this business: is being at the right place at the right time and knowing the right people. And so this contest was bringing talent from all over Canada, people that talent that wasn't seen or wasn't known, but they were as good as the professional wrestlers. So we kind of gave them a platform to bring them into Montreal to be seen by, you know, when you go train with Cody Rhodes and Billy Gunn, QT Marshall, you know, sometimes you're just hoping that one of those guys will fall in love with you, you know, and then and open a door for you. And so this contest has just become so extraordinary. I can't even explain how big this is getting in Canada. I'm getting all the promos now. All the people have been chosen for this contest this year, and I'm asking them to send promos. And you should see, if you have a chance, Lee, you go on my Facebook. It's Jacques Rougeau. You see a picture of me and my girlfriend, and you'll see I'm putting all the promos down that are coming in, and you're not gonna believe how original all this talent is putting in, the time they're putting in, because this year they get each $10,000, 2 men and 2 women, and then, like you said at the beginning of the show, they go spend a week at Bandido's gym and Big Lucha. I went to wrestle in Mexico in 1978. I was only in the business like for 2 years, and when I came back from Mexico, the people in Montreal were going like, "Wow!" because I was doing all kind of acrobatic things. So I went to learn a lot out of Mexico wrestling. So this contest is just amazing, and we're so happy, my girlfriend and me, to create a trampoline for the Canadian talent to be seen worldwide, and to have a chance to go meet the great organizations.
Yeah, and fans, you can go to lutteacademy.ca/en. You can see the wrestlers that are participating in the 2024 Lutte Academy tournament. There's also a lot of details. The quarterfinals being Saturday, September 28th and October 26th, with the semifinals being Saturday, November 2nd, and the finals being November 16th. Something that when I visited the website, Jacques, was the amount of support, as you bring up, from actors and actresses in Canada, but the amount of support from those in the professional wrestling industry, all sorts of names, you know, Axe and Smash, Coco Beware, The Undertaker, all, you know,
Bret Hart, Ric
Bret
Flair,
Hart, Ric Flair.
Tito Santana. You go on and on. If you go on the website, wrestling-academy.ca in English, so wrestling-academy, you could go and you go click on their pictures, and they have a video that they sent to encourage all the Canadian talent, which is absolutely amazing. And the other thing too, Lee, while I'm thinking about it, is when you go a little lower in the website, you'll see all the pictures of the contestants this year. You click on their picture, and then you could see a short video of their talent, of how good they are. So you really get to know the people, and you could follow this competition this fall when it comes this fall, and really get into it. And I'll tell you, it's first class wrestling. It really is. I've been in the business. I wrestled for 45 years, and I could tell you that the talent that we have in Canada that are not known, it's amazing.
You're right. And I was going to ask about this later on, but I'm going to ask about it now. We see companies like AEW working with New Japan Pro Wrestling, TNA working with AAA, AEW also working with CMLL, MLW, NWA is now actively looking for like new territories for them, for talent to develop and have brought up into their system. Could we ever see a point where any of these companies come to Canada looking for a Canadian wrestling company to work with? Because we haven't seen that.
That would be awesome, wouldn't it? It's kind of part of I guess a long look dream of mine. I guess is the good thing about it is by doing business with the Nightmare Factory the last few years, and especially QT Marshall, who took in this deal with me to take care of my winners. Well, when last year when they came to Open Canada AEW, they actually featured my winners in the show of Dynamite and Rampage, and so they had a chance to wrestle in front of 15,000-20,000 people. What an experience for them! So that would be amazing if I could eventually make a deal with Tony Khan, which I had the chance to meet when he came to Montreal. And it's so funny because he was on the air sets, doing the show. And I went to Toronto the year before to meet him, and I didn't even get the chance to meet him in Toronto. Imagine, he was so busy. It was his first day in Canada. And then when he came to Montreal, I had a little more pull there in Montreal. I had a few friends there that brought me backstage and brought me near him when he was doing the voiceovers or just listening to the show. And I was so surprised because when I came beside him, he was at the table. He took his earphones off, and he said, "How you doing?" And he looked like he was so shy and so humble. I couldn't believe it. He had his head down. He didn't even look at me in my eyes. And I said, "Mr. Khan," and I was so nervous myself. And I said, "Mr. Khan," I said, "Jacques Rougeau." Oh, he says, I know who you are. He says, and as a matter of fact, he says, "I like that part when the guy with the leather suit there was rubbing against you." And he was referring to my match with Big Boss Man, the jailhouse match. And it was so funny because he knew my career tremendously. He's a genius of wrestling. And then he started lifting his eyes up, and we had eye contact. And then he told me, he said, and I told him, I said, "Mr. Khan," I said, "if ever you come back to Montreal," I said, "I would love to participate in trying to help you, like sell out this arena. There's a lot of people here tonight, but I'd like for you to sell out, and I think I could help you." And I said, and what would be really nice also would be if you had a chance to salute my brother Raymond and I in front of the crowd in Montreal, which has never been done since we left 30 years ago, the WWF, WWE. And I said, I think the fans would really appreciate that. And he looked at me and he says, "I should have thought of that." So I think he left it like a possibility. And now that QT Marshall is back with AEW because he went back, I think he's working with them now. I think that hopefully with Dean talking that we'll have a chance to do that, just to take 5 minutes at the Bell Center in front of 20,000 people and say hi to Raymond and Jacques Rougeau, the fabulous Rougeau brothers and the Rougeau family, but also just have Wrestling Academy be part somehow to recruit some of the best talent in Canada, because that's what we have in the competition. We have 10 provinces, and we had like 70 inscriptions when we first started this show, and we only kept 34, and that was 70 men apart from the women. So it was like we had to cut down, and unfortunately we had to cut some very good talent, away from this competition. So I think that we're dealing with the best competition in Canada right now, and what a dream would it be for me to be attached again to a big company, like, and living my passion again.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those things that always comes up in my mind, especially like in WWE right now, they're talking about wrestling heritage, and we have the Rhodes family, the Anawahis heavily being talked about. Canada, we know, has the Hart family and the Rougeau family. As the Rougeaus, your father, Jacques Sr., you actually got to team with your dad.
I
You know,
sure
you got
did.
so if I'm not mistaken, it was 19 oh God, where was I? It was
It
19
could be 99. It could be 99 or something like that. My actually my father did a last match with his three sons, Raymond, Arma, and myself, and we were the father and the three sons, and that was something that I had asked my dad I wanted to do at least once because Raymond, my brother's a little older than me, so he had a chance early in his career in the 70s to tag team with my dad once in a while, but I never had that opportunity. And you'll see that my dad is my hero as we talk. You know, he's always been my hero.
Yes, it was when WWF worked with International Wrestling of Canada. That was the one I'm thinking of.
It could be. It could be. And
Um,
but I know it was like it was a show that I'll never forget. You know, my dad first didn't want to, you know, because he was getting up there in age, but he knew it was a dream of mine to have that. We didn't do much with my dad. We kind of left him in
yeah.
the corner there, and when our opponents were in trouble, we'd have my dad come in. But it was a great time for me just to share the ring because, you know, I remember when I was like 4 and 5, 6 years old around the pool in Saint Sulpice where I was brought up, about 20 miles northeast of Montreal and by the river, St. Lawrence River. We had our pool there and everything. And my dad and my uncle Johnny were the promoters in Quebec. And they used to every Sunday night they used to have the main event of Monday night because religiously Monday night was the every Monday night it was wrestling in Montreal. But on Sundays, my father sometimes he'd have the guys come to our house like Joe Leduc, like Abdullah the Butcher, and like those guys. And I was like 5, 6 years old, and I was looking up at them like, wow, with all those scars in their head and everything. And I was afraid of them, but at the same time, they were so kind to me. You know, so I was brought up around the Tarzan the Boot Tyler, you know, and Alexei Smirnov was Michel Justice Dubois, and I could go on with the talent that came to our house, or Bobo Brazil, you know, my Ivan Koloff, and go on and on and on, and I met all these talent, and so anyway, all that to say that I don't even know where I'm going with this, but it's just great souvenirs for me to talk about this. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, so actually in the archives with the International Wrestling in Canada in the WWF, the tag match with your dad, your brother Raymond, and Armand is actually considered a WWF match. I don't know
Was
if you,
it?
yeah.
I don't know that.
Under cagematch.net, they recognize it as a WWF match.
It's amazing, you know. The Rougeaus are pioneers in Quebec. You know, it's and it doesn't start with only with my uncle Johnny and my father Jacques. It starts with my great uncle Eddie Auger, who was the first one who came along, and then, like I said, my uncle Johnny, my father, and then Raymond, my brother Armand, myself, and then my three sons. For 20 years, they wrestled for my company, which you'd be amazed to see my three sons. They were amazing before I closed my company 5 years ago, and so there's four generations of the Rougeau family, and yeah, Rougeau in Quebec. There, it's I don't know how to say that. It's like a Maurice Richard in hockey, or I don't know. It's amazing. It's very well respected. The name Rougeau. You know, my brother Raymond's the mayor now, a mayor in his city now.
Yes, I saw that. I saw you on Facebook wishing him a happy birthday, referring to him as mayor.
Yeah, he's the bright one of both of us. He's but he's a yeah he's a, and it's funny because it's amazing because last year I asked him to be a judge at Wrestling Academy, and he loved it so much that he's coming back this year for all the events. For the four events, he's coming back. Him and Gino Brito. I don't know if you know a guy called Gino Brito. Gino Brito was an icon in Quebec too with the Italians like Dominic Dinucci, Tony Parisi, Dino Bravo, and Gino Brito. They were the Italians in Quebec in the 60s, 70s, and the early 80s. So Gino's came back, and we just did a radio station this morning in an Italian radio station, and he's
wow.
83. He's 83 years old, and he was on the radio station with me, and he was going over stories about Jack Britton, his father, the one who brought the midgets together, you know, and the time of when he brought the Giant and Andre the Giant and Frank Val. When he's going over stories, he's 83 years old, Gino Brito, and he's on the mic this morning, and I looked at him, I said, Gino, Jesus, you're making me look bad. He's got so much memory. He's gonna have fun. He's gonna have fun and being a judge this year. And one of the things that was fun too is like he told me, he says, He says, I'm so happy to do this because when you get to my age, 83 years old, there's not much left to do in life. But he says, now I'm going to be busy with Lutte Academy. So he said, that's fun. So you could see the passion in the man's eyes, and he's 83 years old.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. To have that passion just, come back like that. It's very exciting. I have to ask, you and your brother Raymond were already part of the WWF in 1986. And WWF had signed your brother Ahmad, but he was injured. Do you know what did WWF have plans to put the three of you guys together, or?
I couldn't tell you that. I could honestly, I know Arma had a back injury, a severe back injury. I think he wanted to probably explore. They probably would have tried it out for sure. But I gotta tell you the truth because there's no gray zone with me. My brother Arma, he didn't have the same sparkle, the same passion that Raymond and I had. Arma was a mechanic who became a wrestler. So Raymond and I, we were wrestlers who became wrestlers. So Arma was like a secondary life for him. It wasn't something that he would, when he had time off, he wouldn't talk wrestling, he wouldn't live wrestling. He'd live mechanic. He had his own garage. So it wasn't the same passion. So and to go in the big leagues like the WWF in those days in the 80s and when it was booming like crazy, I'm not sure that Arma would have had the charisma and the talent to have succeeded as much as Raymond and I. And I think I'm being fair by saying that, for the people who know him, and he's but a great person, a great guy. But I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. That it wasn't his first passion in life, Arma.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And if it's not your first passion, I understand the aspects of wrestling to the Rougeaus is like the family business. He had his own path that he wanted. I'm in a family business, and I completely understand.
If you don't eat, sleep, and dream wrestling, you're not going to make it.
Yeah. He wasn't doing one of those three or all of them. So exactly. I understand. Now, 1987, WWF seemingly getting hotter. They have their first action figure line with the LJNs. The tag team is booming. The Hart Foundation of Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart are the tag team champions. And I think you know where I'm going to go with this, because in August 8th, 1987 in Montreal, the Rougeaus defeat the Hart Foundation for the tag team titles.
Amazing.
Considered the first Montreal screw job before Bret against Shawn. Now, when looking up the stats and everything, you see you win the titles, but then your next match in WWF, there's no mention of it whatsoever. Did WWF, any officials, tell you or your brother Raymond any short or long-term plans that they had for you as champions?
No, not at all. We knew what was going to happen. We knew that they were going to announce in the paper 3 days later that the wrong guy was in the ring or something like that. We didn't look at it as a screw job. We just looked at it like they're going to make the people happy in Montreal. But it backfired because what happened, like you said, we won the belts, and it was like for the Canadians, for the Montreal Canadians, it was like winning a Stanley Cup, and it went in hockey. So when we won the belts, I'll never forget the time I left the building, got in my car. There was 5,000 people waiting for us outside, and they were banging on my car. And I remember my wife at the time, she was screaming in the car. She was afraid. I said, "Don't worry, honey. They love us. They love us." But they were breaking my car. They were having like a riot. They were so happy. And then what happened on that Saturday when the TV comes on? We won them, like, let's say, on a Monday night, and then on Saturday the Hearts showed up with the belts. And they never even mentioned the fact that we won the belts. That was a mistake. For me, that was a mistake.
So I have to ask, because there is somewhat of a similar situation involving the Hart Foundation and the Rockers, where the Rockers won the WWF Tag Team Championships and it was on like WWF Saturday Night Main Event when they were doing that specialty with NBC every so often. I believe this is 1989. The Rockers win, but they reverse and give the belts back to the Hart Foundation. At this time, did you or did anyone else think, like, because this isn't the first time this happened, and it just so happens to be both times with the Hart Foundation. During this time, did Vince have any favoritism towards Bret Hart at all?
You know, I'm still sometimes trying to figure out this in life. Raymond and I'm going to bring you another path here, but bring you back to where you're at. Just remind me to bring you back. Bring me back to where I want to go. But I love Bret to death. I started for his father in 1977. Stampede Wrestling was my first territory. Bret was driving a bus at the time. He wasn't even wrestling. He was refereeing, driving a bus. Bret, I love Bret as a person. I love him to death. But I always thought like Bret was, I don't know if he was doing the right thing or not. I question myself today because Raymond and we were always yes man. Vince would always ask us anything. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Bret, he was a hard guy to do business with. He was like, it was like he'd never want to lose. He did, and I never heard it from his mouth. But just working with him for 4 years long, I've noticed and I see that happen. That he was, I think that's even why that the Vince dropped the Intercontinental title from me to Piper, because I think Bret didn't want to drop it to Piper. I don't know why it happened, and I only had it for 2 days. I was the shortest lived Intercontinental champion, but and even Bret, when he dropped the belt to me in Springfield, Massachusetts, he had to announce before the show that he had 104 fever, and the doctor told him not to wrestle. So in other words, I beat a sick guy. I didn't beat anybody. Bret was a hard business. I think Bret was not a yes man. He stood up to Vince, I think, and he imposed a lot of things, and I thought on my career that that's not the way to do it. If you're a yes man, but now that I look back, I'm starting to say, I think Bret had the right idea. We should have stood up to Vince a couple of times. Like, for many years, Raymond and we were waiting in line to get those titles. The first, we worked 4 years against the Hart Foundation. For 2 years, we were baby faces and the Harts were heels. And then finally, they gave us Jimmy Hart 2 years later, and we turned heel and they turned baby face. And we worked another 2 years with them. But we were always telling Pat Patterson, who was Vince's right-hand man, he was a French Canadian, and he was a friend of ours. Pat always helped us a lot, and he liked us a lot because we were good workers and we were professional and we're always on time. And we had a great relationship, and he was always kind of making us feel like, guys, it's coming. Guys, the belts are coming. You're going to get your run. You're going to get your run. And then out of nowhere one day in 1989, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard came in, and they just out of nowhere, they just came in, and Bob Heenan brought them in, and they just passed in front of us when we were just thinking that we were going to get finally our run after working so hard for 4 years. And that was the day where Raymond turned the key off, and he said to me, he says, that's it, we're not going to get our chance. And that's when he retired from wrestling. And so all this to say that I'm still questioning myself today. If I had to suggest that to a younger person today that had a chance in the WWF, should they be a yes man and listen all the time, or should they stand up and give them a hard time or stand their ground? It's a questionable answer that I don't have the answer still today.
Okay. Do you want to circle back to what we had, just to remind, you said, to remind you with Bret?
Yeah, please do.
The favorite, do you think Vince had any favoritism towards Bret at all because of standing up for himself?
I think I almost think that it was a relationship I'm a guy here that I'm a guy that wants a girlfriend and asks her to go out for 10 times and she says no, then it makes me want her more.
That's a really good way to look at it. So doing this, yeah, I totally understand. During this time also, WWF tag teams are flourishing. Like I said, their first action figures come out. You also had the British Bulldogs. And there's a right way to rib people, which we know Owen Hart knew how to do. And then there's a wrong way to rib people, which, as we hear in stories, Dynamite Kid was a ribber, but it came off from a bullying aspect. Now, doing some research, I found Bruce Prichard talking about you standing up to the bully of Dynamite Kid. And these are his words. I'm just going to read them off. I remember walking by the catering area. The amount of blood was scary, Prichard continued. It was like a faucet. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those where somebody gets hit in the face and the blood just starts pouring out. That's what it was like. There was also teeth on the ground. Eventually, Pat Patterson stopped the fight, and once everything was broken up, the WWE roster was summoned to an emergency meeting presided by Patterson, Vince McMahon, and Hulk Hogan. When Prichard was asked why Hulk Hogan was presiding over the meeting, he said, because he was the top guy. He was making sure nothing more was going to happen. He adds, Dynamite wasn't a nice guy. He ribbed people unmercifully in a mean way that a lot of folks felt like he was a bully. I'm not saying Jacques was the most liked guy in the dressing room, but at the same time, people respected Jacques for standing up to the bully. Now that after the mass of the incident, you guys still had to work together on opposing sides 1988 for Survivor Series. Granted, you didn't like each other, you still worked with each other in the ring. What kind of ribs was Dynamite Kid pulling to be viewed as by the locker room as mean and being a bully?
Well, I'll tell you a couple of stories that'll kind of put it in perspective. And it's funny because before I start this, I want to say that Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid were my idols when we came to WWF. They were just absolutely amazing wrestlers. They were. Raymond and I would look at each other like, wow, that's the team. That is the team. They're so innovative and they're so. And we had a match actually at Madison Square Gardens with them, a 20-minute Broadway match with them, and Vince just went nuts, and that's where I think I picked up a lot of heat with them because they were champions, and we were just the Rougeau Brothers from Quebec, and Vince had us do a Broadway. I think pick up some heat there. Dynamite was a mean person, and Davey Boy, he did some ribs too that were, God bless, rest his soul. Virgil just left us. And a great friend of mine, great friend of mine. But when that happened, the first thing that came to mind was I was in London, and he stole my shock stick, and he cornered Virgil in a corner, and he was like threatening to zap him. And my stick was a really, excuse my language, but a badass zapper. It was like a strong, powerful one. It could really hurt you, and he was scaring Virgil, and he was screaming and when I heard him scream, and then I look in my bag, my gun was gone, my stick, and then I went to go. I told him, give me my gun, and I confronted him there just on a short notice. Like, give me my stick. This is my gimmick you're using to scare this guy. And so they gave it. It's just for fun. But Virgil, I'm not gonna say how bad he wet himself. It was bad. He was afraid. And it was like and he played ribs like that. Another one, Outback Jack. I don't know if you remember a guy called Outback Jack, came from Australia. He had no friends. He was in the dressing room, and the Bulldogs invited him to go to the nightclub with him. So of course Outback, wow, the world champions are asking me to bow. I'm in now. I'm in. So they brought him to the bar, and when they got at the bar, they halcyoned his drinks, with some pills, and they put him asleep, and he passed out, and then they shaved his hair complete. That was his gimmick. That was his. He had the blonde hair, like the Crocodile Dundee kind of gimmick, and he showed up at 7:00 in the morning in the airport. They were dragging him. He was almost drooling on himself, and Vince was there, and everybody was there, and then he lost his job. So the guy, he dreamed all his life to go to WWF, and he lost his job, he lost his hair, he lost his pride, he lost everything, and I could go on with stories like that. So I knew when he started, I was his target. That things weren't going to go well, and just to go over it really fast. I had heat with him, and so my father came to Miami to see me wrestle with Raymond because my father's a snowbird. So we landed in Miami. My father brought us to the Miami convention, and early in the evening, Mr. Perfect, he was part of that too. Mr. Perfect wasn't a really cool guy either. I gotta tell you, he was a bad ribber. He was part of that too, and they don't understand how mean and how it could affect people. And so Perfect. We played cards all the time in the dressing room. So what he did is he set me up, and when we got in the dressing room, he put himself against the wall at the other end of the dressing room, and he put me back to the dressing room door and everything, and out of nowhere. The Bulldog, the Hearts, I think Morocco Orton, there was a bunch of them anyway. They came as a clique, and I was playing cards. I had my cards in my hands like this, and Dynamite just came from behind, and he slapped me on the side of my hair, and I fell off the chair, and I turned around, and I had my cards. They flew, and I just turned around like, what the hell? And you got to understand, Lee, I'm not a fighter. I'm an entertainer. My brother Raymond's a tough guy. My dad's a tough guy. Me, I'm an artiste, So I'm not a street fighter or nothing like that. So I don't like altercations like that. I never did. So when I fell off the chair and then I just got up onto my feet, what? And then he started punching me in the face, and then he says, "You want a stooge? You want to tell Vince on me? You want to tell Vince?" And then he kept beating me up, kicking me in the face, and my brother Raymond was on crutches, so he couldn't do nothing. So finally, my brother got up in crutches, and he faced me, said, "Hey, that's enough." And then he turned around and he punched my brother Raymond in the face. And my brother Raymond's a tough guy, man. He took the shot, backed up 2 steps with his crutches, and he looked at him right in the face, says, "You're going to hit a guy that's on crutches?" And then he looked at him, and Dynamite was mean. He looked at my brother, he says, "Nope, I'm going to wait till you heal, and then I'm going to beat you up." And so that was it. So then that's when during that week, don't ask me where I found the bravery, you could call it, or I just decided I'm going to make a comeback. I'm not going to let them insult the Rougeau name like that. And I was thinking of my father, my hero, that was there in the building that saw me all swollen up when I got back the week before, and got in the car. Never spoke to him, and it was horrible that week. It was the worst. It was the worst week of my life. And then finally, when I did make the comeback, we were in the building in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So he sucker slapped me from the back. So I just prepared the same thing. And the night before, which has been a week since that happened, that he beat me up, I remember calling my dad and telling my dad, I hadn't spoke to my dad in a week. Imagine my dad came to see me wrestle. I haven't spoke to him in a week. I'm all swollen up. Not even when I went to sleep at his home before I left the next day. I was like in a trauma. I was like lost in life. And I was like, but I kept going on forward. I kept telling myself, just keep going. It's going to get better. Keep going, keep going. And on the 3rd, 4th day, I said, I'm going to make this comeback. So on the next Sunday, a week later, I called my dad the night before at Fort Wayne. And for the first time, I talked to my dad. And me having kids today, and I can't imagine how my dad must have felt. But anyway, so in this silence for a week. And then finally I called him up and I said, Dad? He says, Jacques? I said, yeah. So I just want to let you know I'm doing my comeback tomorrow. And I wanted him to be proud of me. I just wanted him to just be proud of me. So my father answered me? It freaked me out. My father told me, he says, the only thing he told me, he says, before you go to the show tomorrow, go to the bank. And I was wondering, what the hell is he saying? Go. And then he said, you make sure that you go get a roll of quarters. And he says, when you hit him, he says, you hit him to kill him. That's what my dad told me to do. And I was shaking in my pants. I'm not a fighter. It's so hard. It's so dark for me to do that. It's like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And don't ask me how I did it. And the next day I waited till the time was right. They went to the cafeteria. They went to eat and that. And when he came out of the cafeteria, Vince had a meeting that morning telling everybody that, hey, the next people that fight here, this is enough of this, and I don't want this no more in the territory and this and that. So everybody got loose. Everybody started relaxing, like, hey, there's not going to be any more comeback in that. And then I waited till noon, and then when they came out of the it was the first time in a week that they weren't all together like a bunch of wolves. And then I saw the Hearts come out. I saw Morocco Orton come out, and then I saw Davey Boy come out by himself. Dynamite was the last one standing when he came out, and we were in the hallway, me and Raymond face to face, and in the back alleys, like, around the buildings where the dressing rooms are, there's like a little passage there. So Raymond was on one side, I was on the other side, and I had the roll of quarters in my hand. And when he came out of the cafeteria, I just waited till he got close, and just before he hit me, just before he got about 3 feet from me, for the first time in a week, I looked up at him in his face and I said, "How you doing?" And he looked at me with a big grin and a smile, and I just, bang, I knocked it. 4 teeth came out, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. And he was like, it was like a horror movie when you're young and the blood is, and it kept going. And I stopped I just looked at him, and he fell on a knee, and then he grabbed me by the tights. I thought I was going to kill him. I thought it was the end of it, but no, he was on so much steroids and so much drugs, and no matter what, I don't know what kept him alive. And then he started pulling me in, and my brother Raymond was on the other side, and I just kept looking at him. He was getting up slowly, and my brother Raymond was saying, "Hit him, God, hit him!" Like, stop looking, and hit. And so I started jabbing, and then finally Bad News Brown came, got me by the throat. It wasn't anybody else. It was Bad News Brown who got me by the throat, was very friends with them, and he pushed me back, and I just let him push me back because I did what I had to do. And then finally I turned around and left, but it was such a moment in my life that affected me, that changed my life, because so many things happened because I stood up for myself. Not talking about the respect from the boys. I'm talking about, for 25 years after that, I gave conferences in schools for kids against bullying, to help them to face the bullying and without using violence. How to beat bullying without using violence. I did that for 25 years in every school in Quebec. I did them all. And it changed my life. And then after that, I became Intercontinental Champion. I became 3 times Tag Team Champions. I beat Hulk Hogan in Montreal. There's so many things that changed my life because I stood up. Instead of that night when he beat me up in Miami the first time, instead of putting my tail between my legs and going back to Quebec and finish the Rougeau name, I did something that was like almost like McFly did in Back to the Future, when he was bullied. And it was so it's a moment that I'll never forget, but I'll also remember that it was the hardest time of my life because I'm not a fighter. And to have to confront that, and especially a guy that's so dangerous and a guy that was known to be so tough. I don't know where I got the energy, to be honest with you. I don't know how it happened, but what a sad time in my life, though. What a sad time.
After that, you guys still had to wrestle each other. Survivor Series in '88.
So bad.
If you go back and watch, I've listened to people actually speak about the match. Some say that you guys took liberties on each other in the match, and then others say no. Can you confirm you guys worked professionally?
The only thing I could say was that night in Survivor Series, I was so happy because it was the last night that they were going to be, because they gave their notice after the 2 weeks after I gave my comeback. They gave their notice. They're going to quit the business, but I knew it was the last night. But the first 2 weeks before that, we had to go around, me and Raymond, like Tucson and everywhere, Phoenix, and we were in the same dressing room working with them. And you could imagine the intensity, we'd get out of the car in the parking lot, me and Raymond, and like in movies, back to back, or being afraid to be hit by a pole or a steel thing, or we were afraid. I was so afraid for the next 2 weeks. And then when I got to the Survivor Series, Vince got us on the side and he said, "Guys," he said, "I want to ask you a personal favor." He said, "I'd like to do you do that for me." He says, "Once the match is over, please don't take a shower. Just take your stuff and leave the building." So it kind of lets them save face a little bit. So that was a favor that Vince asked, and I said, "Hey, you got it, boy. I'm out of there. No problem with me." And I'm out of there. I had enough of this there. But what happened, what was amazing was, when a mouse is cornered in a corner, a rat, he's gonna defend himself. And when Vince, I have this kind of pride that's hidden in me that's amazing. I don't know where it comes from, but when we got to Survivor Series, they called all the teams together. There was I think 10 teams in that match, and they called us in the room all together, all 10 teams. So he's starting to go over the finish, Vince, and he says, "I'd like to start the match with Jacques and Davey Boy." And right then I felt the tension coming to me, like, oh my God, it was choking me. I was really afraid, and but I never showed it. So I said, no problem, like no problem. And inside of me, I was melting. And then I said, he says, well, what kind of spot can we do? So right then, Davy Boy jumped on the spot. He says, well, he says, grab a headlock on me, and he says, I'll shoot you off. He says, I'll drop down, and when you come off the rope, I'm gonna catch you with a press at the end of my arms, like press. And then Raymond, if you want to come in, I'll shoot you on him. But he says, when you come off the ropes and I press you, he says, I'm gonna bounce off the ropes with you. And then when Raymond, you come in, I'll throw him back. And right then I knew that he was gonna drop me on my head. I knew that he was gonna pick me up and he was gonna act like it was an accident and just drop me on my neck on the cement floor. And before he had time to finish his sentence, like he says, I'm gonna pick you up and I'm gonna hit the ropes and I'm gonna throw you on. And I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And inside of me, I was dying. I was dying, but I never showed it. And then everybody was looking at me like, you're crazy, man, to do that. Like, you're crazy. But no one said nothing. It was all things that were left unsaid. And so we went into the ring, and it was very smooth. Everything was smooth. Threw me onto Raymond. They got the pin real fast. 1, 2, 3. We were the first eliminated out of there. Got back to the dressing room. It didn't take me 2 seconds to grab my stuff and road runner my ass out of there. But I'll tell you, it's like, and then it was like, I was relieved. I was happy that I accepted that spot. I was very proud out of me being like not a coward but afraid. But going through with it.
Yeah, totally understandable. And soon after, like you said, 1989, your brother Raymond retires. You transition from using your real name, and you become the Mountie a few years later. One of my favorite matches as a kid was obviously Survivor Series 91. The Big Boss Man versus the Mountie, the loser goes to jail match, done in Madison Square Garden. I remember it perfectly. How did all of that for that match happen? And did Vince use real policemen from NYPD? You when they booked you and everything. It was so believable and really well done. Because like I said, I'm a kid and I go back as an adult to this day and still watch that match.
First, I got to tell you, Lee, I got to tell you the most important thing out of all, rest in peace, Ray Traylor. One of the nicest guy on the planet, like Virgil, like some of those guys that Owen Hart, some of those guys that are in the dressing room and you just love. And he was such an easy guy to work with. He was a big guy, but always taking care of you. I loved Ray so much. And what great chemistry we had together. And always being careful when he maneuvered me, manhandled me strongly, but never hurt me. And me and him, we hit it off. And the jailhouse match was amazing. And one thing that I do remember, the most that I remember of that is the morning of the show, because you always have hope in this business. Like, you don't want your run to come to an end. You don't want your so you're having this thing for a year building between me and him, and it's a big climax, and you're always hoping that Vince is going to go ahead and keep you alive or do something, that's going to keep you in the limelight and stuff. So we didn't know until the same day who was going to go over in that match. I had an idea Big Boss Man was going to over, but maybe a finish that was controversial or something, or to keep the storyline going. And I got that call in the morning, and they said to me the morning of the show, and they said, Jacques, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning at the hotel, and they said, Jacques, you need to go to the New York precinct. We're going to do some taping. And right then I said, oh boy, it doesn't look good for me tonight. So we did all of those vignettes, the handprints and all those things that we did, and they're throwing me into jail. So we filmed it in the morning. So that night they put us on early. So you had Mean Gene and Jesse the Body Ventura. After I got put into the jail, Jesse saying, well, Mean Gene, let's go back to the precinct, see how the Mountie's doing. And then between every segment and every but it was amazing. It was amazing working with Big Boss Man, and what a great idea that Vince had to have me come back as a Mountie. I thought that was the greatest thing. And when he asked me to come back, he said, Jacques, is there anything specific that you'd like? I said, yes. As a matter of fact, there's two conditions I'm going to come back. That was a year after Raymond quit. And I said, there's two conditions. And the first one, I want to have Jimmy Hart as my manager. And I said, the second one is I'm going to bring an electric shock stick that I have. And I said, I'm going to bring that. And I said, I want to use that for my finish. And he asked me, inquired about it. I said, well, long time ago when I was very young, Eddie the Brain Creechman had an electric shock stick, and he was in the dressing room for my uncle, my dad, and he cornered me like Virgil was by the Bulldogs. And I said, I got so scared of that. I believed in it so much. I said, the fans today are going to believe in it. And so I said, I want to bring that gimmick to New York, he said, you got it. So from then on, it was like we had, what an adventure we had. And another thing I'd like to mention too, real fast, is some guys that I really enjoyed working with in my career, especially as the Mountie, like Tito Santana. Tito, I love Tito to death. I see him Comic Cons today still, and what great times we had. Coco Beware, and guys that were so easy to work with, and I just wanted to shout out to them because, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Tito had a book come out with Kenny Casanova. Has that ever been anything you had thought about having doing an autobiography?
That could be something very interesting, but I'd be afraid to put everything I've done in life in there, and people wouldn't talk to me anymore.
Well, you bring up, working with Tito and Coco and working with such easy guys.
The Rockers, hey, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. My God. My God, we did some marathon matches. We did some 1 hour matches where the most falls. We did that. And one day we were doing those, for about a week. And then one day we had one in London at noon, and we had one in Philadelphia at night. We did 2 1 hour matches in one day, and you could only do that with the Rockers. And then they brought it to the Madison Square Gardens where we did that match, and we played a joke on Vince because it was the one who won the most matches within an hour. So we made it that at the end of the hour it was like 3-3, so then we played a joke on Vince, and then I took the microphone and said, if you think you're going to get away that easy, I want overtime. And we went 11 minutes overtime, and then the Rockers beat us, so we went like 76 minutes, but it was so easy with those guys. So easy with those guys.
Wow. And yesterday we just lost Virgil. Any, what was it like to work with him? Any, great memories backstage?
God, what a great guy.
Like
work with him. I worked with him in London. I worked with him in San Francisco, Cow Palace. I worked with him a couple of times, and I loved him so much because he was always such a nice person. And I remember in London, it wasn't funny because in London, my character was over so much in Europe, also the Mountie, because of they have the guards over there in front of the palace there, the Buckingham Palace, they have the guards, and there was a little comparison done with the Mounties and the Buckingham soldiers. And so my character was really over there. And I remember, something that politically you couldn't do anymore today, but it was not for being mean. It was just for the character. But I remember beating up Virgil on the floor and getting a rag and just throwing a rag on my boots and tell Virgil, like, shine my boots, and Virgil was on the floor, and I'd take his hand and I'd have him shine my boots. And boy, you talk about a heat getter, you talk about getting heat. But Virgil would do anything. He was so nice, just so nice. And I was so saddened by it yesterday. And also, we lost Ole Anderson also this week. And Ole, I got to tell you something about Ole Anderson. Ole Anderson, he made a big breakthrough in my career. When I was in 1980, when my brother Raymond was in Atlanta with Pierre Mad Doug Lefebvre, another French guy here in Montreal, my half brother actually, and they were going during the winter to Atlanta, Georgia, and they'd work there. And it was the times where Wahoo McDaniels and Ronnie West, the referee, was there, and Tommy Rich and all those guys, and it was a good time, a good era. And so they had me come in as Jerry Roberts. I changed my name because I was a jobber. I was just coming in as a jobber to do a couple of jobs. And I got there as a Jerry Roberts, and Ole Anderson just fell in love with me. And he kept me there for a year and a half. And I work with guys like Flair. I work with him. I just posted on my Facebook this week a match with Ole Anderson when I was I'm a young pup, and he made me look good during the match. And Ole just found a liking in me. And the best thing about that was, like, in all those days, there were small territories. Florida had the territory, Kansas City had the territory, Tennessee had the territory, but when you were in Atlanta, you were on TBS. So you were seen from coast to coast. You were seen from San Francisco to Boston. And every little territory would see Jerry Roberts for a year and a half doing jobs, but always shining during the match. And I was doing so many jobs. I did so many jobs that eventually they changed my name from Jerry Roberts to Jerry Jobber. But it was like, but what great exposure I had. And Ole gave me that spot. And so for me, Ole, when I left Atlanta, I got calls from all the territories. That's when I went for the Fullers, and then Robert Fuller and Ron Fuller, and I went to the Grahams. I went to Pat O'Geigel and Bob Brown, and I went to Kansas City. I went all over the country because they saw me on TBS, and that was all because of Ole. So when Ole died this week, I had this nostalgia about, saying, God, man, that man was good for me.
Yeah, it's very sad that they had both passed away. We send our thoughts and condolences to their friends and families. Jacques, as the Mountie, after feuding with the Big Boss Man, later Big Boss Man would feud with Nails, seemingly having you separated from the Big Boss Man, aside from like a Survivor Series match. Was there any talk of reliving the feud, or even possibly working with Nails against the Big Boss Man?
It's funny that you say that. I think that the Mountie character was over tremendously, and I think that but the hard situation of life was that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Canada, they sent an injunction to WWF, and they banned me from TV in Canada because I was giving a bad image to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And the TV tapings that were done in the United States, that were thrown all over in the world, seen everywhere around, they were only doing those tapings there. So the fact that I couldn't wrestle in Canada, I was having less and less work, and it caused a big problem for them. So they actually, I always said to the real Mounties, I said, you should get off your high horse, because this is only a character. This is like you watch movies sometimes when policemen are dirty, or it's movies, it's entertainment. But the Royal Canadian Mounted Police took it personally, and I was doing such a great job to be hated that they said I was giving such a bad image to them, and then so they banned me from TV, and I think that's what caused the downfall of my character.
Oh wow. You ended up coming back though, with Pierre Carloulet, with the Quebecers, not Mounties, and it said that in your theme, because you guys like rehashed your old Mountie theme music. At any point, was there a rib in your music towards the Royal Mountie
For
Police
sure.
because of the incident with being the Mountie?
For sure, Vince wanted to get a comeback in there, and so yeah, definitely he did that. We're not the Mounties, and yeah, but yeah, but I got to tell you, I really enjoyed working with Pierre, and 3 times tag team champion of the world. You know, that's not just nothing. You know, so it was a great run. It was a great time, and but it wasn't my favorite characters. My favorite characters were the fabulous Rougeau brothers with my brother Raymond with the little American flags and the Mountie. Those were my 2 characters that I really enjoyed the most, to be honest with you.
Oh, I remember Royal Rumble 1994, the Quebecers taking on the Harts, Bret and Owen Hart. This is Owen Hart's last match as a face. After this, he's a heel from here on out in WWF until the end of his career that we see. To me, that's a big moment in wrestling, getting to be part of someone's heel turn. You guys end up winning your match, take the titles and run. Owen beats up his brother. What was it like to work with Owen Hart? And do you have any rib stories that Owen might have pulled on, you know, yourself or your brother, or a rib that you watched him pull?
You know, I got to tell you, this is the funniest thing because Owen was, like you said, a funny ribber. Was a guy who did ribs but he never ribbed me. He never did, not once. And and such an easy guy to work with, and you know, like always a smiling kind of guy, never had a bad face, never, you know. I just had fun being around that guy, and enjoyed tremendously working. The same thing with Bret. You know, it's always been a great pleasure just working with those guys because they were brought up in a wrestling family, like you said, and and the most important thing in those guys is they had basic wrestling. You know, it's not just become an electrician becoming a wrestler. You know, it's guys that knew the basic fundamental of wrestling, and then so they could go out there and they were so smooth. You know, and it was no. I only have good things to say, but it's funny because people refer to Owen as a ribber, and I don't relate to it because he never ribbed me. And you know, and of course, if he's ribbing somebody in the dressing room, he's not going to tell anybody. So you can't be he was a good ribber probably because we never caught him. No one ever caught him, so he kept playing. Bret was the funniest guy, I got to tell you though, because Bret, he used to draw pictures on the board. Like, you know, there was a chalkboard in the dressing room, like in hockey when they plan on a few strategies there. Well, there was always a chalk, and every time Bret would come in early, and it was so funny the designs and the pictures that he made. He must have pictured me 1,000 times, you know, in positions where I looked. It was like, it was so funny, but at the same time, he was like giving me the shot there, you know, or something, like, you know, putting me in an awkward position or an awkward situation. But it was so funny, you know, because it was caricature. You know, it was like, I don't know how to say it in English. It's caricature. It's like pictures of, but exaggerated pictures, you know,
like cartoonish.
Yeah, cartoonish, like, you know. And but Bret was so funny with that. But Owen was very subtle. He was very you wouldn't know if he was ribbing. I never caught him, and I never noticed he was. He was a good hypocrite about that there, you know, like, you know. But but such a nice person, such a nice Owen.
Yeah, I know that there was good ribbers and bad ribbers. I know Skinner was a funny ribber. Mr. Perfect could be a funny ribber, and I always ask about Owen Hart and his ribs. Owen was, you know, one of my favorites, you know, as a kid growing up. So it's always somebody I ask about. What are your thoughts on the Owen Hart tournament that's put on by AEW along with the Hart Foundation that they have in Owen's name that Martha does?
I think that's absolutely awesome. I think that anytime you could commemorate, how do you say that? Commemorate? Anyway, honor. Commemorate? Is like something anyway? Something that you could. I think it's amazing that you have that name Owen Hart live, because Lord knows he deserves it, and what a great family. I think it's a great thing. I think that no one in this business should ever forget the name of Owen Hart. No one.
I agree with you. Happened to be one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. So I always ask about Owen. Speaking of 1994, and having talk about going all over the world, you're wrestling Men in a Mission in London, England. You're not supposed to lose the match, and you end up losing the titles because of an injury that Mabel causes to Pierre, stunned him where he didn't kick out. Was Vince McMahon upset about this at all? Because it did cause a change in the titles that wasn't supposed to happen.
I'm wondering, because I'm an honest person, so I'm going to tell you exactly. You may not like my answer, but I don't remember that. I just there's a few people that came up to me and asked me that question. I don't remember him injuring Carl. I don't remember, because I knew we were coming back to win the titles again against them. I don't remember that. It's so funny. Too many heads in the turnbuckles. Boss man put my head in the turnbuckle too many times. But I don't remember that incident. And a lot of people tell me about it. So I always look stupid when people tell me about it, because I'm in that situation. But I don't remember Carl being hurt by Mabel. Do you remember how it happened?
No, it was a house show over in Europe. So and I know asking about a certain match 20, 30 years ago is, I know that, especially when you've had thousands of matches, it's just something that's always gets brought up in discussion anytime I talk about the tag team division.
I'll tell you, Lee, one thing though that I remember that I'll never forget is at WrestleMania 10 when we double suplexed Mabel. That was the first time. That was the first time he got off his feet for a double suplex. And I remember we tried to double suplex him once, and we hurt our back can't do it. And then Carl just pushed me come on, we can do it. And then we just kicked Mabel again, and then we gave him the double suplex. And that I'll never forget, because me and Mabel, we have a long history, because when we were traveling overseas and stuff, and a lot of people don't know that, but there's always a couple of people that men together, and every time we get on a bus or we'd be in the dressing room, me and Mabel would play cards. We always played cards, me and him, like me and Andre the Giant. Me and Andre the Giant, we always played cribbage. I was a partner of him as cribbage all the time, and there's certain people that you mend with, and Mabel, it was every time we were overseas in the bus, it's funny. First one that was in the bus goes sit in the back. We'd have the table there, and come on, Mabel, bring your money. Bring your money, Mabel, and then we'd have a lot of good time, and same in cribbage. I don't know if you know the game cribbage. There, it's the cribs.
I know the game. Yep.
Yeah. Me and Audrey, we used to play Arnold Skolden, and me and Audrey, and so Audrey. The funny thing about that one was amazing that every time we'd had overseas flights or something like that, Audrey was always in first class, and us jabronis were always in economy in the back. And but as soon as we'd fly up, the flight attendant would come and Jacques Rougeau, I'd say, yes, and come up front, because they couldn't rent the seat beside Andre. He was too big. So I'd always sit first class when I was traveling, when Andre was on the same card as me, and then we'd play crib. It was I love crib. I always play crib, even till today now with my girlfriend. We play crib every night. Every night. I became a master of cribbage. Give me the cards though, but because my father always said, "Hey, keep the luck and give me the cards." But but there's a lot of technique in cribbage, and I enjoy the game tremendously.
Well, I'm going to go off topic here from wrestling for a few minutes. We've talked off camera, text messaging and things like that. One thing that we have in common is someone that we love has dealing with or have dealt with cancer. And I know that you have brought up that your girlfriend is currently going through cancer. And I just want to first wish her the best of luck through it.
Thank you.
My mom has had cancer twice. It's I've got this ribbon here on my arm for ovarian and breast. And then both my rib cages are covered for my mom.
Wow,
And
amazing.
like I grow my hair out now, donate it. When she would be bald, I was bald. That was a rule I made. If you're bald, I'm bald.
That's what
Uh,
I'm doing now.
um, so I would like to wish her the best of luck in that. Cancer is never an easy thing to go through.
My girlfriend's beside me, and she says thank you, and I thank you too, because but you know what, the greatest thing about this thing, the greatest thing is we've been at it now for 5 months doing chemo and stuff like that. I'm saying we, it's her, but it's like, but we're a team in this, and but the best part is like 6 months ago they located like big at the end of my thumb here, a lump like that in her breast, and then the month after it was like a golf ball, and then a month after that it was like a baseball. It's like one of those things that were growing like it was aggressive so much, and now since she started her chemo, uh, it's amazing the results. It's all gone. The baseball is all gone, and now they're even thinking of maybe not even taking her breasts off because she's responding so well. The problem is with the chemo is the side effects. Like, and that's the hardest part. So she bleeds through her nose. She's tired all the time. She loses her hair. She loses her dignity. She's tired all the time, and that's the hardest part to see, because the rest of the battle she's winning. But so when you're fighting cancer like that, and you won half of the battle already because the mass is gone, it's encouraging. It's like, you at least you're not fighting for nothing, and the technology today is so advanced. It's like, because they have this protocols that they have for cancer to take care of cancer, but they explain to us that there's over 1,000 different protocols, 1,000 different cancers that you could have. Some are generic, some are, there's 1,000 of them. But they're so advanced now that they hit her right on the nose, man. They got the what she needed and the chemo she needed, and now she's responding tremendously. So we're very, very encouraged with that. But thank you for the thoughts, and I appreciate that very much.
Oh yeah, she'll be in my thoughts and prayers 100%. Because
Put another tattoo on you.
I will. I've got 3 ribbons on me already, and 2 of them cover my whole side of my body, so I got no problem.
I don't have one tattoo on me, and she wants me to put a tattoo on me, but she wants me to put a wedding ring. She wants me to put a tattoo, a wedding ring. And I said, hell no, I ain't going to cut my finger off. What if we get divorced? I'll have to cut my finger off.
I'm very happy that you the both of you are in good spirits with that, and I hope and pray for the best when it comes to
good.
that.
Thank you. It's
you're,
going good.
You're very welcome. And speaking things that are going very well, Jacques, you've made it to round 2 in the total new network. Fans TKN was created by Avi Klein, a good friend of mine, who has created a Saturday night tournament that you can watch on Facebook, and also his website, thetotalnewnetwork.com. Tons of podcasts with celebrities, athletes,
amazing
actors, actresses. I'm talking WWE Hall of Famers, current athletes that are in other Hall of Fames like the NBA, NFL, Emmy Award winners.
Lou Ferrigno, Nancy Kerrigan. You're talking about all kinds of people. That it's amazing. Yes. Contest.
AEW's Mark Henry is currently part of it. AEW's Rob Van Dam is currently part of this thing. This is a huge this is a huge tournament. Jacques, how did you get involved with the tournament and Avi and everything?
I was just so blessed and so amazed that he reached out to me, and then he asked me to be part of it. I'm just so happy. And then at the beginning, it was like, oh, I don't know about that. The next thing you know is when I first participated, the first segment there, when I did his first appearance, I really enjoyed the show. Like, I said, hey, that's pretty cool, to get to know the people I was on there with, like you said, superstar Hall of Famers, basketball, and different people, and you get to know people on a different angle. And then after I can't believe it, I won for the second round. I'm going to the second round, and then in between that, he calls me up one night and he says, he says, Jacques, how would you like to be a judge? And I said, really? I said, are you in trouble? You know, you must be missing, you know. And he said, no. He said, Jacques, you got a good perspective on things, and you're a good-hearted person. Let come on out there. So I was judge, and I enjoyed it so much. And actually, this Saturday coming up, I'm judge again for the second time. He asked me to be a judge. I love it, and it's like I just opened my heart to them. I listened to them, and it's like almost like in Wrestling Academy. It's like, you know, you're as good as your last performance, you know. So they go out there and I like to, and whoever seduces me the most with their answers, and then I vote for them. It's an amazing contest. What's amazing about this thing is that you get to know people from not seeing them on the screen, like, you know, like in the roles of life, of movies and stuff like that. You get to see him as a person. And, you know, and I'm a big mark. I'm a big fan, like, you know, so I'm supposed to be judge. I don't even know who's there on this Saturday, but I asked him, I said, please, I want to be judge for Sugar Ray Leonard, because he's going to be part of this. And Sugar Ray Leonard, for me, is like, oh my God, is like a God for me. Him and Duran, this fight in Montreal, no mas, you know. And then it happened that, so I get a chance to meet all these superstars, these celebrities that when I was young, I used to worship them, you know, and now I get to talk with them, and now I get to judge them. Holy mackerel. It's like, hey, they're looking at me like they're probably thinking for the show, like, oh, please Jacques, you know. And I'm going like, wow, to have this power in my hands, you know, and those are my heroes, you know. It's an amazing show what Avi put together. Avi, amazing.
Yeah, it's a really cool show, fans, and you can check that out Saturdays. It's the Green Room. Big tournament. As we said, all sorts of athletes and celebrities are part of this. You can check that out Saturday, 8 p.m., facebook.com/Avi Klein. Outside of wrestling, you know, you're being a judge in this contest, but outside of wrestling, you were judged in The Masked Singer for Canada season 2 as
funny, huh?
Hamard the Sheriff,
Lobster the Sheriff.
Yes.
Yeah, what an experience. What an experience. The Masked Singer, holy mackerel, when they called me, you know, they hit, you know, right on the ball, because I love singing. Ever since I was young, I love music, and they didn't know that. They just called me because I'm popular in Quebec, and they decided, oh, we'll get this guy here. But I went we were 20 costumes when we started, and I went all the way to the 8th one. And then, so I did 4 songs. I sang Jailhouse Rock. You should have seen that. That was amazing. And then Old Town Road. I'm gonna take my horse to the old, and then and then John Denver, Take Me Home, Country Roads, and you know, but I had a great time. And the funniest thing about the Masked Singer, that a lot of things that people don't know. The first thing is, when you go on stage with that big old helmet you have on there, the big lobster head that I had, you don't see nothing. It's almost like you're like this. And the only thing you see is like the ceiling and half of the ceiling. So when you come out on stage, you got to judge your path by the lights and the roof and stuff. That's how you got to cue yourself. And you got to make sure that you don't trip over the dancing girls. You know, I had a lot of girls dancing around me. And but what an amazing experience that was. That was awesome.
Now, did they let you pick what you wanted to sing, or did they have like a set list for you?
They obligated me for one song that I didn't like, but they let me pick 3. You know,
okay.
So that was fun, you know. But there was one song they wanted me to do in French, and you know, I'm a French Canadian, you know, so and it's a French show here in Quebec, so they wanted me to sing French, but I don't want to sing French. I was brought up in the States. I was brought up on the road. I like, you know, the music the English music, you know, so it comes more naturally to me. So they let me do 3 English songs and 1 French song, but it was fun, you know, after I got to learn it. And the funniest part was, because of my culture, that I've been brought up on the road all my life, you know, starting in 77, I was on the road in Calgary, and then Mexico, and then all these territories. I lived in the States. I didn't know the French culture and the music. So when they brought up that song that I was supposed to sing in French, that everybody on the planet knows in French in Quebec, I didn't know it. I didn't know it. So they looked at me and said, "You don't know Helen?" I said, "No, I don't know Helen." So I had to learn it from the start. I had to learn it. So I must have sang it about 100 times during the day, like, for about a week, 2 weeks, to try and remember and the notes and this and that.
Mhm.
So, but the other songs came easy though. Like, Old Town Road, Jailhouse Rock, and
Yeah.
all those songs, they came really easy, and that was fun. So I could get more into it. It was fun. It was a great experience.
Well, that is awesome. I've checked out clips and watched it. Good singer, by the way. Good singer.
Thank you. Well, they help you. They help you. In other words, the way it works is you go in the studio, you record the song, and they help you with a little bit of
Mhm.
machines there. But
Yeah,
but you
yeah,
have to
yeah.
you have to be a good singer, to be honest. But there's a couple of notes that they make you look good there. It's like,
Yeah.
and when you come out live, the only thing you got to worry about is the dance and the steps, because it's not you singing in the mask when you sing on stage. It's the recording that you have. So in other words, it's you don't have to worry about singing live.
Life is older, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like the breeze. Country road, take me home.
Okay.
So it makes it a little easier. So
Okay.
but it's still fun, And everybody that meet me, it's so funny because everybody that meet me, they say, "Is that really you singing on stage?" I say, "Sure it is. Sure it is."
Wait,
It's funny.
you've done some things that other wrestlers have not done, and I am talking about pinning Hulk Hogan. Okay, so at the time, I know you know where I'm going. You're in WCW. You have a show in Canada. A lot of WCW talent are booked on the show. You booked the show. You were part of the show. Um, NWO was huge at the time, 96, 97. And Hogan, as we know, is massively over in Canada. If I'm not mistaken, you're the only Canadian to actually pin Hulk Hogan clean without like any sort of interference. And if it was going to be somebody prior, it would have been Bret Hart in the 94 Survivor or SummerSlam when he beat Yokozuna, but we all know what the story was. Hogan didn't want to go over Bret. He didn't want to put Bret over. So Bret beats Yoko, Hogan comes in, Hogan beats Yoko, Hogan's the champion again. What was this whole experience like? Again, the first Canadian to pin Hogan clean, also during his first and seemingly only heel run. And again, he's massively over in Canada. He's the biggest heel in the United States and probably all over the world, during this time, because no one saw the greatest baby face in professional wrestling history turn.
It was amazing. It was I got so many things. I hear you talk. I want to jump in every second there, but
I'm sorry.
no. It's kind of one of the most iconic moments of my career. To beat Hulk Hogan is, who would have dreamed? Who would have dreamed of something like that? But the thing is uh, I was the one who opened the doors for WCW in Montreal with Cookie Lazarus, a lawyer, because Vince had the exclusivity in Montreal in the building. But I was at war. I've been at war for 30 years with Vince now, and because of what had happened between me and him, I had a grudge, and I held it really strong. So I decided to work with WCW and open the doors for them, and eventually they were laughing at me, WWF, because they were saying, "No, we have exclusivity." And I went with my lawyer to tell them, like, "Hey, you can't keep a French Canadian out of a French building for an American. That's the droits de la Charte de la Liberté du Québec. That's the rights of the charts of the liberty of Quebec. You can't do that." So to their surprise, I took away their exclusivity. I brought in the WCW, but the thing I asked in return is I wanted to work with Hulk, but I never expected to go over. I never did. I just wanted to work with him. And to answer your question, that Hulk was over all around the States and the world. He was over much more than I was here in my hometown. And I found that out the hard way, because Hulk was the heel and I was the baby face. And it was amazing because when I came out with the Canadian and the Quebec flag into the building, I got booed 99% of the people, and I'm in my hometown. That blew my mind. I've been in the business for years and years and years. I call the shots. Usually I'm smart, and this one just flew over my head. I didn't expect that. So I kind of went crazy when I got in the ring. I kept playing babyface and being the good guy, but inside I was dying. And when Hulk came out, NWO, and it was like it was the biggest sound I've ever heard, and they were all cheering for him. So I had to work that match, and I had to keep working babyface, and he kept healing. Finally, at the end of the match, I got back about 70% back of the people that finally were cheering for me. 70%. But at the beginning and during the match, there was only one person that was cheering me out of, I think, 18,000 people. And it was an autistic that was by the ring that really would die for me. And it was the only one cheering for me during the match. Everybody else was booing me. I was looking at my friends and they were going like, no. I was going like, what's going on? And it was so amazing in the dressing room too when it happened, because at the beginning, I booked that show, and Flair was on there, Harlem Heat, Dean Malenko, there was a bunch of guys. I can't remember them all. Mongo McMichael was there. What was that other guy too? Anyway, a lot of big stars from WCW. I asked to have that card, and then they gave it to me. And so they're all in the dressing room, and we're all sitting there, and out of nowhere, just minding my own business, Hulk goes in front of all the boys and he says, so, boss, what are we doing tonight? So he said that in front of everybody. And I started laughing so hard. I thought it was the funniest joke, how embarrassing, for him to say that, and he's real serious. He's looking at me. So after I finished laughing, and everybody was laughing too, the boys were laughing too, he says, what are we doing tonight? He says, how are you beating me? And then, and for me, I just kept laughing, and everybody was. Then there was this look on everybody's face, like Hulk seemed serious. And then he said to me, he says, "Hey, I'm not kidding." He says, "It's your show tonight." He says, "You're going over." He says, "How do you want to do it?" I said, "Well, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I didn't know how to answer." And I said, okay. I said, and he kept persisting. And I said, okay. I said, well, how about if I just small package you? You beat me up so bad, and at the end I just catch you with a small package, And he said, let's do that. And it was a lot of times I ask myself, why did he do that? And just between you and I, and the millions of people watching right now, I think that he had a little cold front with Bischoff. There was a power trip with Bischoff at the time, like who was the real boss. I think there has a few conflicts in decision. I think that's only hearsay. And the two things that come back to me also is like that he told me, Hulk, because he had such respect for the Rougeau family in Montreal. That was one thing that I could appreciate so much, for him doing that, because he's a kind man. If you get to know him personally, he's a kind man. He's a good friend of mine today. And the other reason why I think he did it, I was just coming out of that thing a couple of years before that, where I stood up for myself in the bullying situation with Dynamite. Mm-hmm. And I know he had a lot of friends that were bullied. And I also think personally, honestly, this is only me thinking, Hulk was never a target for the Bulldogs because Hulk was Hulk. He was the god. But I think inside that Hulk may have been a little afraid that he'd become a target one day. And I think that because eventually, when the ego of some guy gets bigger and bigger and bigger, who knows till where it's going to end, So when I put a stop to it, when I put a stop to the bullying for a while in the WWF, I think Hulk, and Hulk knew I wasn't a fighter, so he probably respected all the pain that I lived and all the fright, being afraid and everything that I lived to manage to do that. I honestly think that's one of the reasons why he decided to put me over. It was almost like a personal gift. And over the years, I went to see him at his gift shop in Orlando, and I went to sing karaoke in Clearwater at his bar there, which is amazing. If you go to Florida, you got to stop by his karaoke. He's giving out the Hulk belts, it's amazing. It's amazing. People are having so much fun, and they're living Hulk all over again, but it's for singing. But Hulk is a great person, and I have so much respect, and it changed so many things in the eyes of the true fans of the Rougeau family, and some of many fans that my notoriety just went much too high. I don't deserve it, but now that I got it, I'm happy that and people. It's funny. I do radio stations. I still do newspapers. Everything I go and when I do podcasts, I always say, "Hey, don't forget, I'm the only Canadian to beat Hulk Hogan." But it's like it's I brag about it, but in a good way. Like, it's amazing that I had that opportunity.
Yeah, completely tremendous. I do have to ask because I remember Pierre Carl Ouellet, PCO, wrestled the Giant on that show, eye patch for eye patch match, and Carl won, and you won your match. If it was a power struggle with Bischoff and Hogan, do you think Bischoff took it out on you because your next match in WCW was against the NWO? It was the Giant and Lex Luger, and it was like a 3-minute match, and they won.
Yeah, I gotta tell you something. I gotta tell you something amazing. When we came back from that match, I know Bischoff wasn't happy because when he put that match together, he put the Giant with us and then Carl, and it's so funny because he put us together and he says, "Okay," he says, "I want you to take Jacques and I want you to over the top rope to the Giant." He said, "I want you to throw him onto the table in the bottom." Now, Carl is the guy who takes tables. He's a young pup here. He's the guy who's used to that. I'm not. I'm not that kind of style of wrestling. And Bischoff told me, he says, "You're gonna take Jacques and you're gonna bring him through the table over the top rope." I looked at Bischoff. I said, "No, no, he's not gonna do that." And then I said, Carl says, "I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it." And then he was like, and so I stood up to Bischoff right then. It's like, so yes, to answer that, I never liked that guy. I met him at a Comic-Con. I was very polite with him. I said hello to him and all that stuff, but I didn't like the way he used us. I didn't like the way he actually put us on a contract for WCW. It was embarrassing. I was working once every 3 weeks. And when I was working once every 3 weeks, I got paid for a whole year doing nothing, absolutely nothing. He didn't use us. And I think it was more for the deal of him coming into Montreal and opening Montreal that I think that's why I got my job there, to be honest with you. But I know for a fact what you're saying, you hit the nail right on the head there. But he was so mad that I beat Hogan in Montreal, especially when he was on top of the NWO. He was like, and then he comes to Montreal and he gets beat by Jacques Rougeau, and with internet and everything, and it got around so fast that I beat Hulk Hogan. So yeah, that was that you'd have to ask Hulk that one day. Really, you'd have to sit down and ask him, yeah, how did that happen. And I'd be curious if one day somebody asks Hulk, and you would have an open heart conversation with him. Why he did that to me? Why did it did me that favor? I'd like to know one time from his heart, that but and if it's and if it's for out of respect for the Rougeau family and for me standing up for myself in the business, then I want to hear about it. But if it's anything else, I don't care to hear about it, to be honest.
Well, I've got a great quote from Hulk Hogan here in a minute that I'm going to get to, but I want to ask first about what were your thoughts about going back to WWF during the Attitude Era in '98? What was it like to be part of the Attitude Era? But there's one match in particular I'm going to ask about, but first I'll let you answer the first question.
I think we were at war with Vince already. Like the downfall had started, and since I'd left him, and I gave him my notice after the Men on a Mission match where we were supposed to beat him at WrestleMania 10 with our finish in the middle, and he changed his mind 1 hour before the match. So that was the beginning of the end for us. And after I brought WCW to Montreal and all that, and I think it was just, I think we had such a short run that it was just to get us back to it was personal vengeance from Vince to have the last word. So to be honest with you, it wasn't fun at all. We were we were misused. It's fun to do your job when you're in storylines and when you're in good positions. But when you've been to the top and you've had so much success, and then you come back in a jabroni position or a jobber position, then and it's not fun. And go ahead, ask your question. I know it's going to hurt my feelings, but go ahead. We're here.
Oh
for
no,
that.
this actually isn't going to hurt your feelings at all. I had found you had a dark match as coming back as the Quebecers in '98. I was with your brother Ray and the Quebecers taking on Edge, Tom Brandy, and Sean Stasiak. At any point, was there a possibility of your brother Ray coming out of retirement working the dark match with you?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was one
So
dark
Raymond
match.
teamed up with me and Carl?
Yes, it was you, your brother. It was your brother Ray, Carl, and yourself taking on Edge, but he was going by Adam Copeland, his real name, Tom
Really?
Brand, and Sean Stasiak in 1998.
It's
It
funny
was
because Adam Copeland, now I met him at the at AEW in Montreal, and we're good friends. It's funny. He had so
Yeah.
much respect for me. He had so much respect for me when he was the main event in Montreal, and I was happy just to shake his hand. And then he came up to me. He says, "Hey, how you doing, Jacques?" And then he was so nice to me. I went, "Holy mackerel!" It was almost like holy mackerel, like But another thing that was fun too is I just come off the Chris Jericho cruise. Chris Jericho had invited me on the cruise, and seen Paul White there. And seen Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and we had so much good talks, and it was so fun. And Paul White is so nice, Jesus Christ, he was so nice to me. And then yeah. So it's funny how I grew older, and I matured a lot over the years. And but I noticed that there's a lot of people that do like me, and contrary to a lot of people that don't like me, there's for reasons that are okay. I could always defend myself, but the real ones, the ones that weren't jealous, the ones that weren't two-face, or that weren't working close to Vince, or that were like their gophers, or their those people, I get along great with. And if you go on my website, the wrestling-academy.ca, with my contest, Wrestling Academy, you'll see, like you said before, go see the guys that are giving me a hand just to vouch for me. All those guys are, when I meet them in Comic Cons, they're really nice to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's nice to see those guys, and to see that they appreciate me like that. I always lacked of confidence and insecurity. I always was that kind of guy, and so it's nice to see that. Hey, it's not that bad. There's only a couple of fruits there in the basket that don't like me, but the most of the guys, they like me, so that's nice.
I think I'm going to bring up one of the fruits in the basket
Please do.
that
Please
don't
do.
like you. And this is Jim Cornette. I've listened to some of his stuff about you, and it's a very passive aggressive. I'll compliment the man, but then he follows with something not so nice. One of the comments on his shows, this is a direct quote: French Canadians have a natural air about them, or a manner about them, or a manner of speaking that is natural to them that just irritates the fuck out of people, and then refers to you as a French Canadian prick.
Okay. I have something to say about Jim Cornette, if you don't mind me saying.
The floor is yours.
The saddest thing I feel about Jim Cornette, the saddest thing is he must not be happy inside. He must not be a happy person, because every time I met Jim Cornette in person, every time, it was always, "Hey, Jacques, how you doing, Jacques? How you doing, my friend? How you doing, my friend?" And I never argued with him once in my life. I never had a harsh word with him. Never did. He was always very nice to me. And then over the years, as I turned my back on Vince and then had my feud with Vince, I started hearing things, and like you said, you're not the first one who brings it to me. And I'm saying to myself, there's something you'll learn about me today, Lee. I'm going to explain this to the best of my capacity. normal people are here, and autistic people are here. I must be somewhere in between there. And I always had a hard time understanding thing when I was younger in life. I always took things so seriously. I never was diplomat. If I hated somebody, I'd let them know. If I liked somebody, I'd let them know. There was no gray zone in my life. I never was the type of guy, never once in my life, that would look at someone and say, "Hey, how you doing, man?" And then when he turned around and say, "Oh, this guy's," I never was that kind of person. I never was, and I never understood people that do that. And now today I know that Jim Cornette is one of them. I know that if I met Jim Cornette somewhere someday, he'd look at me and say, "Hey, Jacques, how you doing?" He'd do that again. So I feel sad for the person. I really do. But I know he was close to Vince. I know he was Vince's stooge and Vince's gopher. So when I turned my back on Vince, a lot of people that were close to Vince, like even I heard Bruce Prichard say some things about me that I was so sad, because Bruce Prichard, every time I met him in person, it was a hug. And and it was this. I never had a bad word with Bruce Prichard. Never did. And so many times, the brother love, I had so much fun with him. I thought his gimmick was so good, and I had fun with the guy. And then I started hearing things over the years. People that were close to Vince, and some others that would say things about me, but with no foundation, because we never had. So to them, I feel sorry for them, because I never did nothing to them personally. If I was arrogant, maybe I was a little arrogant. I'm reminding myself of Shawn Michaels a little bit at sometimes. We were good at what we did, and we kind of sometimes made it easy, sounded easy. And I was young. I was young. I matured over the years. I just want these guys to know I matured a bit. And I never badmouth anybody, and I never talk behind nobody's back. And sometimes, I missed some opportunities to shut up. I admit it. I'm not perfect. And I also admit that my brother Raymond, he's the brain of both of us, because Raymond was so liked. Raymond, everybody talks about Raymond so nicely, but Raymond, he was discreet. He would talk to me about things that he would never talk to other people. Me, that was my problem. If I had something on my mind, I'd let you know. If there was good or bad, I'd let you know. There was no gray zone with me. And the other thing too is, I'll give you an example where I picked up some heat a lot when I was younger. The guys would be booked like 25 days a month on the road, and it was a serious area, an era where steroids, where drugs, were uppers, downers, pills, and everything. They were in their bags. And sometimes we get the booking, we'd be sitting in the dressing room, and the guys would say, "Okay, San Diego Monday, San Francisco Tuesday, Los Angeles, that's a great tour there. And then what? Winnipeg and Montreal." And then they, out loud in the dressing room, they'd say something like, "Oh, we got to go to goddamn Canada again. And we're going to frickin' Montreal again." And I'd look at them like, "Hey, that's my home, frickin' United States too, it's like,
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't give a shit about the States as much as you don't give a shit about Canada." It was just going back on them, putting me down, my country down, or my home down. I'd do the same thing to them, because I love the States. I always did. But I mean, it was just like, it was spontaneous. Like, hey, don't cut me down. And I replied where Raymond never said a word. Raymond was quiet. He was smart, Raymond. And I missed a little bit of but I understand the guys now today. And I didn't understand it then, that when they'd come to Canada, they couldn't cross their drugs. They couldn't bring their steroids. They were losing 40% on the dollar. They'd come and work here, and their dollar was worth 60 cents here in Canada, because they had to. So there was a lot of reasons why they were pissed off, because when you're on drugs and when you're on pills and this, and you can't bring them across the border, you got to leave them somewhere. And you got to come into this country where you may not have the contacts with the doctors or whoever to get the stuff, So whatever reasons it was, they didn't like to come to Canada. A lot of the guys didn't like to come on tour. And me, I always took it personally. Another time, I'll give you another example, just like that. Pat Patterson comes to see me one time in a dressing room, and he says to me, he says, I was speaking with Raymond and Rick Martel. We're speaking French in the dressing room. So he comes up to me, he says, Hey les gars, il dit, ça vous dérange-tu, on parle anglais un peu? So, hey guys, do you mind? He says, well, do you mind speaking English a bit? And I looked at Pat and I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, he says, some guys, you know, they think you're talking about them when you're speaking in French. I said, well, why don't you go tell Tito Santana and Pedro Morales to stop speaking Spanish then? You know, why are we allowed? This is our native. We're speaking between friends and family here in French. And one of the guys went to him and stooged and told him that he didn't want to hear it. You know, so it was like when I found out when that guy was, I turned around in front of all the boys and I told them, I said, if you weren't such an insecure, no good, you know, this and that, you wouldn't think that we weren't talking about you. You're not that important. You know, we're just talking in our native language. And so I lack sometimes of being diplomat. And you know, so I think I got some heat for that. And my little arrogance that I had, but I was never mean to anybody. I was always had great conversations that people wanted to talk to me. I was a guy who liked to laugh, who liked to have fun, who liked to just joke around a lot. And a lot of the guys sometimes they had problems with their family at home or different things, problems. I was joking around like a young kid that was having fun, and sometimes you could get on people's nerves, you know. So I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of all that. But one thing I'm not guilty of, and I'll always stand by, is if I shook a guy's hand and I gave a smile to him and I liked him and I said, hey, how you doing, my friend? When he turned around, I would never stab him in the back. And that's a message I'm sending to you, Jim Cornette, and to Bruce Prichard, that you fooled me because I always thought you guys liked me.
Well, I will say this, in defense of Bruce Prichard, he, in another episode, was asked about the Hall of Fame, and he 100% believes that the Mountie should be in the Hall of Fame. And I want to end on a good note, Jacques. I want to end on a high note. And I'm going to read a quote from your friend, WWE Hall of Famer, Hulk Hogan. You know, Maniacs, I was watching the WWE the other night, and I was real curious who the first inductee to the 2023 Hall of Fame was. Oh my gosh, it's Rey Mysterio. No one is more deserving, a champion, a great man, a great father, and a great husband. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. For years and years and years, he's carried the torch. But when I thought, you know, who could be next? Who could be just as deserving? And then my first thought was one of the greatest tag teams of all time, the Rougeau Brothers. Jacques Rougeau, brother, and his brother Raymond Rougeau, the two guys that need to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm voting for them. Hopefully, they'll be the next inductees into the Hall of Fame, man. Man, I just think it might happen. I got a real good feeling about that one, brother. Now, that quote was 2023. Your brother Raymond recently just did an interview where he believes that you guys can be in the Hall of Fame. And in his quotes, I always had a great relationship with Vince. They always do that at WrestleMania. If WrestleMania was to be held in Montreal, we'd be in. If you notice where they have WrestleMania, the Hall of Fame will have a certain local flavor to the Hall of Fame induction. They would have to come to Montreal, I think, for it to happen for us. Now, your brother thinks you'll be in the Hall of Fame, but believes and feels Montreal is the best place for that to happen. Last year, Hulk Hogan advocated for you guys. Bruce Prichard had even said as you as the Mountie should be in the Hall of Fame. I gotta ask. I know you. I know in your heart and soul you would absolutely love to be in the Hall of Fame. Would you like it as the Rougeau brothers, the Mountie, or a question that I like to ask? Do you think WWE should have a family wing section to the Hall of Fame?
It's very easy for me to answer. because the people don't know my Uncle Johnny and my father, Jacques, and my grand uncle Eddie Auger, I would have to go with the Rougeau brothers. I think because Raymond and I, we've proved ourselves around the world. And if I manage to become the Mountie later on and the Quebecers after, it's because I made my first appearance with Raymond, my brother. And I think that the Rougeau name should be in the Hall of Fame, like the my God, the Grahams, the Funks, and all the great families of wrestling. They should be in there because you could have the biggest house in the world, but if you don't have a great foundation, your house is going to crumble. And I think we're part of the foundation of wrestling, the Rougeau family. And I think that Raymond and I would be a great treat, a great respect, a sign of respect. And the funniest thing is I'm thinking of what you just said. I never looked at it that way, that I've been at war with Vince for 30 years. Now karma's taking care of things. But my brother Raymond, he was loyal all his life to Vince, and everything that he gave, the miles, the sweat, the commentating, the everything he gave, and the fans that when we go in Comic Cons, we have lines that are huge that people come to see us, and they all tell us like, when are you guys going to be in the Hall of Fame? When are you going to be in the Hall of Fame? So I think that now that he's gone, I think you're saying that Triple H is in charge. I think Monsieur Lévesque, because he has a French name there, I think Monsieur Lévesque, you should get down to business there and show respect, not to the Rougeau family, but to the French-Canadian fans, because they certainly think that we deserve to be in there.
100%. And I would love to see the Rougeau brothers. And I would also personally like to see WWE do a family wing, because there's a lot of wrestling families in professional wrestling that have, it's different if as an individual puts all their time and effort into that career, but you have generations of families, the Rhodes, the Anawahis, the Rougeaus, where families have dedicated their lives to this industry. And I think it'd be a good way to pay back to the families is to have a Hall of Fame family wing section. And the Rougeaus also.
So I'm gonna start voting right now for Lee for president of the Hall of Fame.
I just look back and I think multiple family members in your family were involved in professional wrestling. Same with the Rhodes, same with the Anawahis, the Stasiaks. A lot of I just
the
listed
Briscoes, the Funks,
Von Erichs. Yes.
Von Erichs. There's so many, eh? There's so many.
That
the Fullers, Welch's, Robert Fuller, Ron Fuller, and their father, Mr. Welch. I can't remember his first name there, but he was the first one. And those are great families of Tennessee and Florida, and they made their mark as wrestlers, as promoters. Southeastern wrestling, and then they've contributed so much as wrestling. So yeah, I think that I think something should be done. And but eventually, I think the most important thing out of all this is we know there's a lot of politics involved. That's the like you said, sometimes Hall of Famers are inducted for the use of the company or for whatever. But the most important thing of all this is when I meet my fans in Comic Cons and I go see, I see in their eyes that I'm already inducted. And I think that's the most important thing for me.
That's incredible, Jacques. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to speak with me today. I had a fantastic time, and I would already like to invite you back on to come back on at a future date.
I don't have anything else to say, so
anything you would like to plug from Lutte Academy, to any social media, anything upcoming projects, please take this time and promote everything away.
The most important thing right now in my life is wrestling-academy.ca to be able to help Canadian talent to get exposed in the world of wrestling and give them a chance to to have a career like I had. So check out wrestling-academy.ca and then follow it. And our shows are filmed on YouTube, so you could go check the last seasons if you go there, and you'll see it's a lot of amateur stuff put together because we're not Vince McMahon production. But you'll see the most important thing is the content is great, not the production, but the content. And so have fun. And if you're a wrestling fan, I think you'll enjoy it tremendously. And watch the season this year. And Lee, thank you so much. And it's, I was nervous before the show. I'm glad the way it happened, and you treated me so kindly. I thank you so much. And congratulations on you being the #1 show in wrestling all over the world. And it's amazing. I'm just so privileged to have the chance to give exposure to my wrestling academy and my talent that are dreaming one day to be in the big leagues.
Trust me, the pleasure is all mine. Fans, I will have all the links in the descriptions to all the videos for you to visit all of Jacques' websites, from Lutte Academy to Wrestling Academy. You'll be able to check them all out in the links in the description. Jacques, thank you for coming on today. Fans, remember, spoiler freeze, the way to be. We're out.